program, and to especially to have a chance to have this conversation about Pollak, architecture and public. I think before I go much further, I do want to make some acknowledgments, because we know all design work is collaborative, but these projects, in spite of their tiny size, do involve huge numbers of people, a lot of collaboration. We thought we were going to do some kind of a special slide where we showed all the people popping up that were doing the different things, but then, of course, we didn't even make one special slide. But our main collaborators being the Horticultural Society of New York, with, in particular, Kate Shora, who was being, until recently, vice president and then president. And other non-for-profits also have been involved, including the Rush Arts Foundation in Brooklyn. The collaboration has also included institutions, Brooklyn Public Library and Queens Library, and at a very fine-grained level, especially with the Queens Library's very significant involvement of director of capitals, director of programs, director of branch libraries, like really, for institutions to take on outdoor program spaces with a partner that allows them to even think of doing it, it's a big step. And so they really are, one, it's very exciting, and we were lucky we got to know all of our Queens Library clients, who we're now doing this much larger project of the Elmhurst Library. We got to know them designing a garden, and everybody's so excited. They said, like, well, let's have a pond with goldfish. Well, unfortunately, we took the suggestion to have some water, and then it ended up being like totally crazy. But in any case, communities and neighborhoods and schools and different community partners in different ways that we'll be able to say a little of. People who built it, the green team of the Horticultural Society, but in the contractor in what were some of his first larger projects, Dave Melrose, did a lot of teaching of how to build in terms of what was realized, and was a big contributor. Our own staff at MPA is completely, dedicated to these projects that had very little time allotted to them in work hours, and so we were always having, like, not sleepovers, but little extracurricular garden work. Funders, one is funded by the little one. One is the smaller budget, $25,000, the Stone Avenue in East New York, funded by the Garden Club of New York City, and the other was funded by Councilman Wheeler, and had a construction budget of $175,000. So they're quite different. A lot of in-kind donations, salvaged bricks and so on, but also all the plants were donated for the Stone Avenue. That most of them, every year, the Channel Gardens on the roof of the Rockefeller Center, those gardens, they take all the plants out and so give them to the Horticultural Society. So we work to be able to use many of those in our design. So that's a significant amount of acknowledgments. And now, Sandra gets to.
Well, I guess that there is a slide up there. So the key notion that we try to pursue is that rather than public as a notion that is embedded property in a situation, becoming public is the active process related to the acquisition of knowledge, which includes how space is designed, constructed, and maintained. Those three properties being essential in the dynamic aspect of becoming.
The Horticultural Society of New York's GreenBranches program, in public-private partnership, in our case, and with Queens and Brooklyn library system, constructs and maintains learning gardens in underutilized outdoor spaces at branch libraries. The program enables libraries, which have been called the last truly remaining public institutional space, to realize what's a tremendous potential of sites that are not only long derelict, but derelict for like 70, 80 years, because nobody knows really how to take on and use outdoor space, to realize these sites as public outdoor program space. Public in the sense that anybody who has a library card, that they're both entered through the library rather than from the street.
So site-specific aspects of the GreenBranches system include the process, and again, the word is key, residents of public housing to construct and support the social natural public ground, and that's going to be the first little project we're going to show addressing this involvement of the residents of public housing, and the transformation of the fence from barrier to active zone of interaction between street and library. As you can see, the conditions of the two sites are quite derelict. In the case of the project on the left, which is the one in Brooklyn, it's the back of a library that was built at the beginning of the 20th century. In the case of the library garden in Queens, instead, it's a fenced area that was not used at all and not accessible except for an exit door from the inside of the library. So the strategies were to activate the ground on the one hand, and on the other hand, to activate the boundary. So these two notions of ground and boundary seems to us to open terrain for the growth of the notion of boundary. I think that that's yours. I think that Linda's going to talk about the first of the two. I'm going to talk mostly about the second.
Just to say that we use these two construction views of the two gardens to, well, we sort of discovered them ourselves in the sense of having an understanding how in each case we were making a framework out of what was there. And in both cases they involved using tremendous amount of what was there and really building up the architecture from a response to, well, for instance, in the Whitestone Library on the right, to not being able to replace the fence in the budget. So that allowed us to invent a way to transform it, which is what we wanted to do all along. This first part of the talk really is about processes, and as Sandra was reading, how the processes are what allow different people to, in a way, take ownership, either of certain experiences or of the space itself and its ongoing use. And a number of those processes, as probably most people in this room know, happen with the communities. When they work, they can really work. The woman, well, I'll start with the aerial. Is you can see the library is here, and this is Brownsville in East New York, and that this has appeared pretty recently at the League when there was the $1 Million Blocks exhibition, and it is a very, very tough part of the city. It's quite bleak, and there are very few resources, and there was a murder right next to the site when some of the people were there building the library, the garden, and it's it's quite different, say, for instance, from Whitestone, which is in a very next to a shopping center in Queens on a nice street. But so one of the contexts is this pretty relentless brick public housing, post-war housing. The library, which was actually recently renovated by inside by Rogers Marble, is very nice, and it was the first children's library, specifically dedicated to children in the United States when it was built in 1914 as part of the Carnegie program. The upstairs in the library, there's the Heritage Center, the Brownsville Heritage Center, that's run by this woman, Patricia Deans, who has a lot of different kinds of community involvement. When we went up there the first time we were at the site, we saw this quilt, and it was one of from the Underground Railroad where they would hang a quilt out as to signal a safe house. And we did get that became a kind of inspiration for a way to think about geometry and pattern in the garden as a kind of counter to the pretty relentless geometry of the housing, to instead of just putting a lot of natural curves or whatever into the this garden as a counterpoint to the housing, to do something that could have a little more intricacy, and also with the raised planter beds to enable different people of different heights and ages and so on to work, and also classes to work, or groups to work simultaneously. So the idea of the quilt planter that weaves together different kinds of planting was born out of that. Green Team is a completely different process. That's a transitional work program. It's a one-year internship that is a program run by the Horticultural Society. The people who come into it have been previously incarcerated at Rikers Island, where the Horticultural Society runs another program called Greenhouse, which trains people with horticulture and in building garden elements. Green Team, you can see, so it's a one-year program that they also get help finding jobs and stuff at the end. So this is at Stone Avenue in the East New York, and this is Whitestone. And you can see this is laying this path, which gets interplanted also with using this donated bricks at Stone. And then here at Whitestone, one thing we were able to do was to design the project so it could be fabricated that the steel elements that occur intermittently would be required significant skill and brought from off-site, fabricated in a shop, but that instead of there being steel running in between, that this would all be wood construction between that could be done with a less level of skill. So in order that the Green Team could have this bigger role. This is another process, and this, or several actually, this was an opening, community opening. This is these girls, teenage girls working on a teen tree trunk carving that contributed significantly to the Stone Avenue Garden that was funded by the Rush Arts Foundation, which Horticultural reached out to them, and they, with a local artist who led the teens in learning to carve. And then on the right is a group of kids in the Read and See program where they were drawing the garden. So there was, when we started the project, there was a number of ailanthus trees embedded in the fence, and they shaded the garden significantly, and there was plenty of shade with some sycamores in the public housing right adjacent. So we couldn't replace the fence, and we couldn't touch it either, because we would have had to then take responsibility. So we cut off the trees at the top of the fence, and this was a volunteer arborist, and who Kate also reached out to, who cut them off. And then there's a volunteer neighborhood boy who came almost every day during the construction and the planting, and got to have his own pair of gloves that they would keep at the site. So here's some carving going on in an early stage, and more close up. Then here's this two girls that the kids designed their own sculptures, and then there was a pinup and so on. And then this is actually not by a teenager. This is a much older guy who was in the neighborhood who was a cane maker and carved canes and the heads of canes, and he made that as very intricate. This was an opening day, and you can see here's Patricia Deans, and here's was the artist who worked with the teens, and they collected over 300 cans and then pounded them out to use the aluminum to make the sculptures. So this was pictures from the Horticultural Society website blog. Kids in the arts, Read and Seed in the arts workshop, drawing the garden and the sculptures and the housing and so on, the environment. And then I love this, to be able to see the quilt planter painted with this beautiful watercolor.
Well,
to you?
Sure. I mean, I think that Linda gave a very exhaustive introduction to the spirit of the the two components of the project at Whitestone. You see on the left, Kate Shura, the director of the Horticultural Society, took the resident, you see a model, and again, existing conditions. As opposed to the other case in the middle of housing, the condition of Whitestone is to be surrounded by parking lots with the library isolated on the corner and facing the street where other institutions are with a blank wall, as I said before. These are two quick shots of the model. Please notice on the upper right, at the end of the gray platform, there is a gray shaded area that corresponds to a punch opening. We managed to bend this in its library to do, and that's going to make a big difference in terms of the relationship with the trellis, which is one of the two components of the transformation of the image. So becoming public in this instance means that the fence and the wall, the trellis and the planter redefine the boundary, transforming it, having it performing in terms of showing, as you see in the axonometric sequence at the bottom, how that which is a limit becomes a strategy of engagement. And this is essentially the other detail of the project, where you see the existing fence that was measuring the wall being cut and rehung from the trellis. Well, as you can see, we were involved in the process. Once we did that, we realized that the spacing of the existing fence was excessive and would not be to code. That gave us the opportunity of introducing these wood pieces that eventually retie the fence into the trellis system. This is a view, as I said before, in which you realize that just the opening of the passage within the wall of the library makes a difference. And this is a view on the outside. Again, another, where the role of shadows in this instance becomes important in the trellis and in the shadows that the fence projects on the side. This is something that relates to a project we've done with the Horticultural Society for them, which is this fence system that becomes also a system of shading in some wall. And as you can see, there is something about the skills of the people that did the work that was already experimented in this instance. This is Kate having a contractual argument with me. This is Peter